I've got a lot of weird, wacky ideas.
I pooed my pants on the way to a first date one time.
That is crazy.
We were both stunned at how many people from around the world were tapping into view and find out. If I tried to do that now with the content that I made back then, I don't think I would have ever been seen.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to another TellyCast. My guest this week is YouTuber turned mainstream TV celebrity, actor, author, voiceover artist and producer Joe Sugg. We're going to be talking about Joe's career to date, his new dating format, Date Me at My Worst, and what he's got planned for the future. Plus, we'll get to hear his story of the week, hero of the week, and who or what he's telling to get in the bin. For more videos featuring the movers and shakers of the TV and digital content industries, just hit the subscribe button below. Joe, welcome to TellyCast.
Thank you very much. What an introduction. It makes you sound like a real Swiss Army knife.
Well, I mean, I was just looking through Wikipedia, looking through anywhere online. I was like, he did that as well, Shaun the Sheep voiceovers and all sorts of stuff that I didn't know before. So
I've got to say the Shaun the Sheep voiceover was, they don't speak in the film. It's all just noises. So I grunt in that movie at some point, but I will take it.
You take the credit for that. Brilliant. Well, listen, I mean, there's lots to get through. So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I know you'll have been asked this loads of times before, but just can you just tell us in a really potted version about how you got to being where you are today, from being an apprentice thatcher, working on roofs all around Bath and Wiltshire and places like that.
Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning and how did you get into YouTube and how did it start?
I mean, I think it stems back from, I was a very, very creative child growing up. I think partly because I grew up in a very, very small, sleepy village. So there wasn't a lot going on. You had to use a lot of your imagination, and I've got quite creative parents as well. And me and my sister used to buy blank cassette tapes, and we used to record our own shows. We used to pretend that we were from the band Hearsay, I think at one point, and had our own series where we played different characters and record all these different, I guess what now are kind of like podcasts, but when we were kids. And I used to always draw a lot, and so always very looking for different like creative outputs. And social media came along, and this was when I was still a roof thatcher working 6 days a week on the roof. And my sister actually got into it before me. She started a blog. And for those that don't know, my sister is Joe Sugg, known as Zoella on social media. And she started a blog, which then led to her starting vlogs. And this was going back 2011, I think, or 2010 even, possibly even earlier than that.
So this was a text blog, essentially.
Initially a blog, text blog. And she would blog about just things she bought from Primark, or 50 things in her room. And we were both stunned at how many people from around the world were tapping into view and find out what she has in her room and stuff like that. We couldn't quite sort of believe it. And that sort of grew and grew and grew. And then it got to a point where I'd appear sometimes in her content. I'd come home from work and she'd be filming a video, so I'd like poke my head in. And my sister's fan base is predominantly female. And so when they saw me, they were sort of a bit like, oh, who's that? We need to get your brother in more videos. And so I was like, I reluctantly agreed to be in a video called The Sibling Tag many, many years ago. And then from there, she convinced me, and the people that watched the videos as well convinced me to start a channel myself. So I did that. I used all Zoe's old equipment and had to get her to sort of teach me how to edit and crash course on editing. And then it just sort of took off and snowballed. And I just thought I did it as I was still working as a roof thatcher at the time. But on my Sundays, I would sit down, record a video, edit it on the Sunday, upload it as soon as I could, because the next our internet where we lived was so bad. I think it was like 2 megabytes per second upload. So we had to upload overnight to get it up for like the Monday or the Sunday or whatever day it was, like the night before. And it just sort of took off and snowballed and got bigger and bigger and bigger, and got to a point where I had a conversation with my dad, sort of saying, I think this could go somewhere. There's a good chance it could go somewhere. And I was quite lucky because my sister was already sort of paving the way and showing that you could get a career out of this and it could go to a certain level. So because of that, I think that it got to a point where I asked my uncle if I could have a year off just to see if I could make something of it. And I think nearly like 13, 14 years later, I'm still going. I'm still hanging on in there.
and you're still recording vlogs every day, every other day, right?
I'm just about to upload my 1000th vlog on my vlog channel. So I think I've got 4 YouTube channels. And yeah, so I'm just about to, the vlog channel is very much the sort of behind the scenes of what I get up to in a day, like the best parts of my day condensed down into sort of like a 15, 20 minute video. And yeah, this morning I was editing the final bits of this 1000th vlog, and it's kind of like a reflection on all the vlogs I've done so far and those other 999 vlogs. And it's nice. It's a real trip down memory lane, and it's so nice to look back on and sort of reflect. I've always said, like, especially the vlogging, I feel so lucky to have been able to do that and sort of share all the cool experiences with my audience, and to be able to look back on it and go, I wonder what I was doing on this day 9 years ago, and I can see exactly like, oh, I was doing this, or I was interviewing this person. It's like it's nice to sort of keep a video diary. Me and my sister are both very nostalgic, quite sentimental people, so I think we both have this sort of thing of like creating this massive back catalogue of our lives to probably watch back on when we're in an old people's home. I don't know.
But this is one of the reasons you've become so successful, is sharing a lot of your own life and not being afraid to do that. And it's been a real organic growth where I can imagine your community, you are really super engaged, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, just commenting, just looking at some of the comments, people, oh, I remember this video and this video, and it's like, it's extraordinary looking through, like literally the last one you did. It was like, it's a super engaged fan base that you've got.
I feel so lucky to sort of have the fan base I have had since the start of making videos. I mean, I think what's kept them there is a lot of the people that watched me grew up watching us as well. So we were a bit like, if it's equivalent to me, I remember when I was sort of in my sort of peak YouTube era, I went on to have my first Radio 2 interview with Steve Wright, I think it was. And I was a fan of Steve Wright because of I used to listen to him when I was thatching. I knew it was home time when I heard Steve Wright's voice, because it meant it was time to pack up the kit and go home. But as I walked in, Dick and Dom walked out, and for me that was like my Thatcher Joe of like my childhood, because I feel like I grew up watching them in the bungalow and all that. Those kind of like programs, I feel like they've always sort of been a part of my childhood, and it's quite nice because, like, even though I'm a lot older and didn't watch them anymore, it's like the respect is still there, and I'm still like, you were such a big part of sort of my childhood in a way. So it's quite nice to have that moment with my own audience. But I think in a way what sort of helped massively is that I've enjoyed what I do for so long, and the love for it has never sort of gone. And I think that's what reflects on my audience, and I think they can see that. And I think as long as you're enjoying it, your audience enjoy it also. It's like that sort of thing is quite transparent, vlogging and YouTube and that kind of thing.
Well, what really piqued my interest in terms of your back catalogue when you're talking about all of this content across your different channels. It seems like you've been able to experiment with and master lots of different genres within YouTube.
Yeah.
And also I mean, you've got a gaming channel.
Yep.
And also all the different, and we'll talk about game shows and formats and things like that in a second, which is really interesting development. But I mean, is that what you've done through your YouTube journey? And it seems like you've never been afraid of testing and learning and moving on and iterating, and which is what everybody says is the key thing for YouTubers and social media experts. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, the way I see YouTube, for me, it moves so quickly as well. And I think when I started YouTube, I started off doing like observation videos. So I talk about like 10 things everybody does when they go to the cinema. So it's like, there's the annoying person who eats really loud with the popcorn and that kind of stuff, like the relatable sort of content. But you're sort of, back in those days, it was like walking into this giant, vast space and being able to run off in any direction you want, and no one really knows the outcome of where that can lead to as well. And trends, so for me, it was like I felt like a child in a sweet store. Do you know what I mean? There was almost too much choice. I have a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests as well, and gaming being a big one as well. But the content that I was doing initially wasn't that. But then I saw that I then discovered gamers that I watched, and I was like, well, I love gaming. Why don't I start a gaming channel? There might be a portion of my audience that enjoy it, there might not be. And I decided to create a separate channel for that because I was a bit like, I don't want to take a risk and start uploading gaming content onto what I call my main channel, which is where I do like the more polished. I say polished. If I watch them back now, they definitely aren't that polished. But I wanted to do something separate to that, just in case it didn't quite work out. But in a way, it sort of I am a bit like you don't know where it could lead to and stuff. So I think I've had the gaming channel. I also started a cooking channel with my girlfriend called In the Pan, where we just did cooking challenges. And then I had obviously the vlog channel, and so it is. I think YouTube is so fast compared to possibly like the TV world. I do feel like YouTube is like trends and what's popular and like what's like, I guess like the meta of like that the algorithms and all that kind of stuff. It's constantly sort of changing and evolving. And I remember gaming sort of came in slightly later, but it is now such a big part of YouTube and has stayed such a big part of YouTube. But there are a lot of sort of trends and stuff that I always sort of think, I wonder if I should jump on this, because I do believe that on YouTube especially, you need to kind of evolve and be a bit versatile and be a bit sort of I was going to say moldy, but that's not the word. Malleable, is that the right word? Yeah. So you've got to be able to change and go in different directions and not be worried about it. I think I've never been too worried about trying something new, because I think at the end of the day, if you're the first person in an online platform now where so much footage is uploaded daily, if you're the first person to try something and it doesn't work out, it does not matter, because if you're the first person to try something and it does work out, the reward then is so much bigger.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, have you seen YouTube change over the years? You know, because you were one of the real pioneers, and now it's an extraordinary amount of content, as you say, being uploaded, and so popular. And you know, and we'll talk again about that in a second. But the way that the TV industry and YouTube seem to be merging in many, many ways, and certainly the attention economy. Everybody's looking at YouTube and getting rid of subscriptions and what have you.
Yeah.
Have you seen it change, and have you adapted to that?
It's changed a lot. I mean, I always say if I tried to do the route that I got into YouTube, if I tried to do that now with the content that I made back then, I don't think I would have ever been seen. I don't think. I think it would have just gone and no one would have watched it. I think I was very lucky to have started when I did, and because back then there was nowhere near as much saturation as there is now on the platform, but also it's just rise in levels. I feel like YouTube is a competitor with television. I think in that sort of space. And I think that's probably what their intention is to be. Obviously, they want as many people to watch YouTube probably over TV as possible, or over any other streamer. And I do think that production levels are going up on YouTube. You look at the likes of what the Sidemen are doing and Mr. Beast and a lot of these big sort of bigger YouTubers now. They've got full production crews for their content. And it seems to be the way that it's going, but I think you also need to have the right ideas as well, and sometimes to come in with like original ideas, I think, is still key. It's hard to come across now an original idea, but when they do come through and they do get picked up and seen by the right people, I think YouTube's a fantastic place for an idea to take off and grow and be successful.
Yeah. And so you talked earlier about editing.
Yeah.
You've got nearly 9 million followers across YouTube, across your channels. You still editing your own content? I mean, do you have you have a team, or
no? Do you know what I up until like 2016. So from 2012 to 2016, I did everything myself, and then from 2016 to like 2019. I had a producer / editor who worked with me, and he was brilliant. It did massively help my workload. I think at one point I was uploading 11 videos a week, which it'd be like at least 7 gaming videos a week, and then 2 vlogs, and then like a main channel video on a Sunday. So it was a proper regimented, like routine type thing, which I loved. And then I did Strictly, and that sort of then took me off into a slightly different direction. Then I went on to do Waitress. So then the timing wise, I just wanted to sort of try something a bit different and go down a slightly different route. But I have been sort of in discussion, because I'm still editing now, and I do feel like it's probably a good time for me to start looking to get like at least an editor in to sort of help that workload, because it does take up a lot of my time. I did this thing called Vlogmas, which is where you try and vlog every day of December in the lead up to Christmas. And it was a struggle. I did manage to do it, but it was a struggle because you film all day, but then you basically sort of either edit really late at night into the early hours of the morning, but then the next day I think as I'm getting older, maybe it's an age thing, I don't know. I feel like as I'm getting older, it's getting harder to stay awake trying to edit, especially when it's my voice that I'm editing. I feel like whenever I edit myself, it naturally makes me quite tired.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's but yeah. So definitely in the future, I would like to slightly sort of go back to sort of how I was a few years ago with having like that sort of producer editor sort of role again.
And all of the we've had a few shows on TellyCast recently when we speak to the guys at Little Dot and lots of other experts who talk about the importance of metadata and your descriptions and your tags and all of that stuff. I mean, do you sweat the small stuff as well when it comes to that? Or?
Do you know what? I never really have. I do. This is where it goes down to. I do say I think I've been very, very lucky to sort of to get to where I got to in the YouTube game, because I've always been sort of like, I like to sort of do things my way, and I'm sort of slightly, when all these new like rules come in and people go, oh, this is now the new way to crack the algorithm, I'm kind of like, I think it's a part of me that doesn't want to follow the herd.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it's the same with like video ideas. When there was a tag that would go along, I used to, but then I went for this phase where I was like, I want to be the one creating these challenges and these tags. I don't want to be the one that just jumps on any YouTube tag or YouTube challenge that's there. And I think that kind of like, I admittedly, I probably should pay a bit more attention to the sort of nitty gritty details of how YouTube works now and how social media works and how to properly crack it. But there is something I think that above all, you could do all that stuff, but there's something about authenticity and, like I said before, coming across like you are in doing something that you genuinely are passionate about and enjoy. I still think that given the right circumstances will trump all the smaller metadata sort of tiny little bits.
Yeah, especially with your fan base as well. I mean, they can always, that your content will be coming straight to them anyway.
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah. And
you don't need to be discovered.
No,
as much.
yeah. And in a way, like I'm in a position now in my career and where I'm at and a lot of creators that were from my sort of era that don't do YouTube as much anymore now are in. We're all in the same boat where we're sort of like, I love the fact that I've got this like slightly smaller audience now, but of people that are very like engaged and like grew up watching us. That they're very like, they are there for like they're sort of like day ones almost. They're very like what's the word? Like they've just been there for a while, and they're just like, it's just a regular smaller audience. It's something that just feels more sort of comfortable about that than going out to like millions of people. Where you're then much more open to people coming across your content for the first time and not particularly liking it or wanting to leave like a nasty message or anything like that. So when you've got your own sort of smaller, loyal community, in a way that's something that I kind of prefer. But I mean, I wouldn't mind getting 10 million views on a video again, but maybe not. I don't know. It's been a while since I achieved that.
We'll see. This one might be the one. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned Strictly. I just want to touch on that before we go on. Obviously, there's been a fair amount of controversy over Strictly the last couple of weeks, and lots of stories have come out over the last few years about people's experiences. You obviously had an amazing experience, and which changed your life.
Yeah.
I mean, that must be something that you take enormous comfort from, and seeing how that changed your life in many different ways. Yeah,
I mean, it was I was very fortunate that my experience on the show was great, and the amount of people I met through that show, and even obviously from doing the podcast after as well. So I sort of felt like I sort of stayed part of the sort of Strictly family. It's difficult. I mean, I couldn't I could not dance before doing that show at all. So I did find it tough. It's difficult to learn to dance, especially when, for me, I remember the first day thinking like, I do not want to go home on this show. So I think I'm like quite a subtly like undercover, what's the word, competitive, like very, very competitive, but like you wouldn't know it sort of thing. So like I work hard behind the scenes to make sure that I could get to that final, because you don't want to miss out on a dance, because there's all these dances that you can learn. So I just didn't want to miss out on any of it. So but yeah, it was a great experience, and I definitely think that helped sort of spur my interest in production, the production side. Because I remember when they asked me to go on the show, it was when Louise Rainbow was the producer on the show, and Stefania, who's still there, who is the talent who finds the celebs to the show, and I went along to the meeting for them to try and convince me to do it. And I remember going in thinking, right, I'll take the meeting and I'll go along, because I kind of really want to pick their brains about how the TV world works, and like how a show like Strictly, like such a behemoth of a show that does so incredibly well on TV still, how does that all work? How is it put together? Like who does what, and how do they go from like the initial day one of doing the show to then the rap party at the end? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I left not really knowing too much about that, but I ended up leaving going, I think I might actually do it, you know? So it worked out quite well in a way. But I think from being on the show, I got to sort of see a lot of the ins and outs of sort of how it's made. And it did definitely sort of ignite that sort of interest in me with sort of the TV world as well, and how good TV is made.
Yeah. Well, we're going to touch on your production company in a second, but coming back to what we were talking about when it comes to YouTube and digital first production versus traditional TV. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you see that those merging sectors going forward?
I think the way I sort of see it is like it's kind of like each both want a bit of what each other have. So it's like YouTube, I feel like the way YouTube's going is it's getting more TV. Like you look at some of the most popular videos that the Sidemen do, for example, and they're TV formats that they're just sort of doing, but they're putting their spin on it and doing their version of like what's already an established format, but they are also putting in more of a TV sort of style production into that as well. So I feel like YouTube is sort of slightly going more TV, and then TV is trying to, I think, like in the TV space, a lot of them are sort of thinking, well, how can we tap into that YouTube audience? So they're adopting sort of tactics and things that they picked up from YouTube to try and make shows appeal more to a younger demographic or a YouTube watching demographic. So it's kind of like they're both sort of almost slightly naturally going into this sort of era where there is a bit of like a cross section. That's what I've sort of observed so far from it. I think the reality is that, I mean, for me, I still love like Saturday night TV. I still watch Saturday night TV. There's something for me that feels, I think it's because I grew up watching Saturday night television. So that's something that's very comforting about it. Even if it's a program that I'm not that interested in, sometimes it's nice to have it on just so it feels like a Saturday evening. Whereas the younger generation growing up, they don't necessarily know that. A lot of them are growing up with iPads in their hands, and they have what they want on demand when they want it. So it is going to be interesting to see like when that generation is older, how that's going to work with traditional television shows, and are they going to be able to sort of capture that audience?
Yeah,
on
which
television?
is going to dominate, right?
Yeah.
Because the viewing habits have changed so much.
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years.
Exactly.
You would imagine that, an infrastructure and a platform as big as YouTube and the power of the algorithm and everything else might be the one that might come out on top. Who knows?
I would think, like, for me, I mean, I'm like diehard YouTube for life type thing. Like I love YouTube. So I'll always, like, although I grew up with television. I still will always like, I just think YouTube is going absolutely nowhere. I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger, especially like the idea that you could be interested in trains and you can just find you could probably find 4 or 5 different formats now based on trains. Do you know what I mean? There's so much out there. I don't know if that's a good analogy or anything, but there's so much to be able to find right there and search done. Whereas TV can't necessarily provide that yet. Whether or not that changes in the future, I mean, it's when I really wish I had a crystal ball so I could really get in there. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm hoping Final Straw will sort of inevitably be a part of when that does happen. But it's a super interesting space to sort of watch and see what is going to happen there. But yeah, I can't see YouTube going anywhere. I think it's there to stay, and it will just get bigger and bigger. Yeah.
So tell us about Final Straw Productions then. So that's your own production company.
Yes.
And so what's the vision with Final Straw? What's it been set up to create?
So the Final Straw is, I want it to be sort of like a vehicle for coming up with formats like entertainment and entertainment formats for whether it be that for TV. I think one of our main goals is ideally to try and get a format away internationally, which I think is probably a lot of people's, their goal is to, if you can sell a format internationally, then that's great. And it's a massive success and stuff. So that's obviously the big goal, which I'd still love to do. But also I think what we want to do at Final Straw is be able to have an idea at the start of a week and go, wicked, let's work up this little format. What's like the sort of smaller version of this sort of bigger, intricate format? What's a smaller sort of basic version that we can just go out, test it on digitally or wherever it can sit, be that on as vertical on TikTok or as a longer form YouTube content, and go out and just sort of test it for a lot less budget than it would be if it was for television, and then kind of approach it from that direction of having, like, we've made this smaller sort of pilot for an idea that we've got. Let's take that to commissioners to see if there's an interest there for the bigger version, which we have a deck for, of that idea. Or is it we take that idea and try and get it brand funded, so then it means that we can do loads and loads of episodes of it, and then hopefully it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then there might be an interest from somewhere else, or it might just remain on the channel and just continuously to do well. So it's kind of like the main thing though is like the idea that what I like is the idea of, to get that bigger goal of trying to get a big television commission, we've got this other option of, let's just test these sort of smaller ideas and see how they do, and see
how where the audience takes it.
Yeah,
almost,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, especially from where I come from, is everything I do that I put online is instantly met with feedback from my audience, or I can see in the back end who's watching from where in the world and what age demographic and stuff. And it's been interesting when I have done different styles of content to see actually, that weirdly, when I start doing videos about metal detecting, the older demographic shoots up, which, I mean, you could probably guess that, I suppose, because metal detecting is probably not the most fun thing if you're a youngster. I don't know. For me it was, but maybe not. But it's just interesting to have all that sort of data and to use that. I mean, it's so that's mainly what Final Straw is all about.
And is it this is not just you, is it? I mean, in Final Straw, tell us about the structure of the business, because also BBC Studios are involved in this as well.
Yeah. So I've partnered with BBC Studios. So they've got like I did a distribution deal with them. So they sort of they provide like support and stuff in trying to help get the ideas to the right people, and then sort of, I guess, kind of like try and help shop it around to see if we can get a bite somewhere. And it's been super useful. I mean, at my time, I didn't realize before when I started the production company and I did the deal with studios, it was amazing to me going into BBC Studios in White City for the first time and learning from the people there. I mean, Sasha Grimstitch, who's my head of development, the amount of stuff that I've learned from him is incredible. Like all the stuff that I wouldn't have known about in the TV world and how the TV world works, and other people at the BBC as well that have sort of in a way sort of like mentored me to help try and figure out how Final Straw plugs in to the BBC slightly, and how we can work together to try and make something that's different and try and find this middle space between sort of social media and YouTube and traditional television.
So your first format, I think it's your first format that you announced recently, is called Date Me at My Worst. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the first one so the first idea we managed to sort of get a bit of funding for to go and make our first sort of digital pilot was Date Me at My Worst, which it actually, so we had a few different ideas for dating shows, and then Sasha, who's, like I said, is my head of development, he found a mattress study that said that there's different phases of a relationship. So months 0 to 2, it's all roses and moonbeams. Like you don't see any of the bad stuff up top. It's all just like you put out your best self as long as you can. But as the months go on, things start to slip a bit. You start to get more comfortable around that person, and then some of your bad habits start to slip out, and then
farting.
Yeah, the farting and all that kind of stuff. So, and then by sort of month 6 or whatever, it then becomes a point of like, oh, actually, this is not the person that I dated on date 1. Can I get past the farting or the horrendous morning breath or this, that, and the other? I don't know. So there's all these little things. So we came up with this dating format where we get a load of singles. It was three guys, 3 girls, and we had one episode where it was 5 guys, and we had Max Belegde as the host, who's for those that don't know, is a TikTok star, and he hosted it, and it was kind of like a group date setting where they all get to know each other, and then a klaxon goes off, and they start dropping these reveals in about each other, and then so the reveal will come in, they discuss amongst them like if it would be they sort of discuss whether it is an ick or whether it's a tick, or whether it's like this is a good thing or a bad thing, and then we reveal who it was. And by the end of it, they write down who they fancy after all getting to know each other, their sort of best side, and then they revisit it after they found out everyone's bad bits, and then they write down to see if their choice has changed based on what they found out. And then both episodes, we managed to, I think it was a 15 grand budget we got to make this. And so as you probably know from television, it's not a massive budget to go and make something. But I think what's great about with YouTube and what I want Final Straw to be is that we can make things happen and ideas happen on a smaller budget to hopefully then go on and sort of get some traction and get the bigger, sparklier version down the line. Because we actually had this version that we did put out on the Final Straw YouTube channel is the more condensed, testing the core concept version, whereas the actual version that we pitched and had some interest from a dating brand initially, and from a commissioner. But the bigger version is a lot more expensive, and it involves a hotel and a lot of moving parts and different bits and bobs. So we couldn't, and I think in the current climate of what I've learned from my 2 years so far in the production world is that to get a commission is very difficult. There's a lot of people who are quite reluctant to splash the cash and take a punt on an idea,
especially right now. And a new idea is
exactly. So unless it's like a reboot of something, and I kind of understand it because I was sort of, if I was in that position, would I take a punt on this new dating show idea, or would I go for something that has already got a history of doing well in the past? With a production company, probably that's a lot more established and historically have provided good shows in the past. And I think if I had that decision, I'd probably also go, maybe this one.
If I wanted to keep my job.
Yeah, exactly. But so that's what we've sort of found over the last 2 years has been like the tricky bit. So we'll think, okay, right, let's test this core concept for what is quite a small amount budget wise, and then just get it out there and see if it can get some traction, then put it in front of it. And if it can't, let's put it in front of some brands and see if some brands will get behind it and sponsor it, and try and basically we don't want to let anything get shelved. We want to, if we've got ideas that we truly believe in, we think have got and have got like a route to get to the bigger version, and it's been definitely thought out, then let's go for it. Let's get it on YouTube. Let's see if it can find an audience, and go from there. So that's where we're currently at, and it's we're happy. It was very fun to be on like a set of something that felt TV, because we had like a sound crew and camera guys and the full sort of setup, but it also still felt quite YouTube, and I got to sort of be in there as that sort of producer role as well, and I had my notebook and I was writing notes for the edit and sort of like editing in my head as it went along. And it was something that I remember afterwards, after we wrapped, I was like buzzing for like 2 days afterwards, and it was like I hadn't had that feeling for a long time of like feeling like, I think because we put so much work into the lead up to it, of like developing the idea and making sure it all works. Sasha had to make a round table that was big enough out of MDF like the day before. And we had to buy, I think we budget-wise, because of the budget, we had to buy, the tablecloth was a £13 king-size bed sheet from Amazon. Like, so we proper roughed it, but that's what made it so much more of like a payoff afterwards to get 2 episodes out of it for that sort of price. We were super stoked by it.
All right. Well, we've got a clip, so let's have a look at Damie at my worst.
I pooed my pants on the way to a first date one time.
That is crazy.
You all kind of repulsed me.
I would get up and leave.
You've got nothing else going for you apart from your fluffy and nice.
I charge people to see my...
I can't deal with that.
What is going on? My mum's gonna watch this.
Would you let someone wee on you?
I'll be open to it, to be fair.
He's only put toothpaste on my... That is a lie!
I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with someone who's talking to their ex. Fuck off.
That's just irresponsible.
This wasn't in my contract! Fucking hell! I'm unwell. Welcome to Date Me at My Worst.
So, Joe, show looks great. In terms of your experience as a YouTuber, and you said your experience as essentially a director on set and a producer on set, I mean, how did that impact your experience and your input into this as a new format?
I think because of my background in YouTube, I've got a bit of like a it'll be all right on the night kind of attitude, which I don't know is a great thing. I think it can be quite stressful on the day of like, because I've always sort of think like, we're gonna get something. There's gonna be moments. I have a lot of faith that we're gonna get good stuff, and I always know that from being so much in YouTube edit, I can make horrendous videos turn out good just from the editing. Like, there's always a way of, if you do like a collab or make a video and it's not quite how it was meant to go, there's always a way of editing it to make it still have the pace and the energy and still look good. So I've kind of got a bit of it's going to be a very positive, it's going to be great, it's going to work out, it's all going to be fine, sort of attitude to it. And I think, but also in terms of, like I mentioned before, like pacing and stuff, I've always got the idea of the audience attention span in my mind as well. And I think especially if it's going to go on YouTube, although I do think long form content is making a comeback on YouTube, and there's a place for everything on YouTube, to be honest. But I think obviously the more popular stuff on YouTube is very thought out of, okay, we've got to keep people hooked in for as long as possible, because it's all about retention time. It's about, on YouTube, it's click-through rate and retention. So you've got to have a thumbnail that's going to stand out and a title that's going to stand out. That's like rule number one. So even when we were shooting, I'm thinking there's a moment where our host Max gets a lap dance from one of the contestants, one of the contributors. And in my head, I'm straight away, I'm like, there's our thumbnail right there. Is that moment where he's like mid jump above the host. I'm like, we need that in the corner. Then we need 3 like shocked faces on the right hand side with a title. I can see it all in my head. That's going to look great. So when I'm on set, I'm thinking of stuff like that. I'm thinking also about like clips, because like I said before, attention spans are getting smaller and smaller. So you have to, and the clipped content is also super, super important. So when I'm there, I'm also writing down my notebook moments where I'm like, that's a clip. And I think it's the same in podcasting. You probably do it too. You sort of go, okay, right, this is definitely a clippable moment, or this is going to use a clip here. So things like that are really important. And also just sort of making the contribs and everyone just feel comfortable on set as well. I think, so I remember that sometimes I've done TV shows where it does feel quite big and quite daunting, but when the crew come over and sort of chat to you and make you feel comfortable, and when it feels good on a set, you instantly open up and you just feel so much more comfortable, and it just makes everything better. So I think that was a big part of making sure with me on set, especially having been in TV and done what I've done on YouTube, to be there for Max, the host, to sort of, in a way, sort of help guide him and make sure that he's comfortable, but also make our contributors all feel comfortable as well. I think that was a big part, because in the past I've done collaborations with other YouTubers where I haven't known them that well. So sometimes I've always had a rule where it's like, I'll only collab with somebody if I've hung out with them first, because then at least feel like then I know them and it's not going to be awkward on camera. Whereas, so kind of want to make sure as best you can that everyone is comfortable with each other and everyone feels sort of in a good environment, I guess.
Yeah. So just looking at content creators today that are just getting started, Joe, can you give them a little bit of advice? You know, you've made a huge success of your YouTube career, now moving into TV and this new generation of digital first content and TV and formats and this really, really exciting new area. What would you say to digital content creators now who want to get to that place, who are just starting out? What would be your advice?
Well, I actually got a management company called MVE as well, which I set up six years ago now with my old YouTuber roommate Casper Lee. So we have that company together, which manages upcoming sort of TikTok and established TikTok talent, Instagram talent, YouTube talent. So I do find myself sort of giving a lot of advice and stuff anyway. So it's I would say I've always lived by I've always had this rule of like the 3 C's, so which are really important, which is collaboration. I do think collaborating with other people as you're growing is super, super important. It just helps get you in front of new audiences and cross-pollinate audiences. And it's just, I think it's so key for growing, especially in gaining new subscribers or followers. Second one is consistency. I think you have to be consistent. I think, and especially at the start, like compared to when I was very consistent in the beginning of my career, and that's definitely what sort of helped me get to where I got to. But I think even more so now, where YouTube and social media is so populated and there's so many people out there sort of doing stuff that you also want to get into and do, I think you have to be consistent. And the third C is creativity as well. Like trying, it's once again even harder now in today's world, but if you can come up with an idea that no one's done before, even if that video doesn't take off and get big, but somebody else sees it and does it as well, but credits you, it's going to help elevate you as well. So like, as long as if you're being consistent with your ideas and your ideas are consistently unique as well, or you bring something different. So let's say you're going down the vertical of angling, you're into angling, you're making an angling channel. How can you make content that is different to everybody else's, makes yours stand out? That's the key, I think, of growing on social media. But also to add to that as well is the authenticity. You've got to, I think, especially nowadays, when we started, I couldn't look up to anybody really to go, that's the level I want to get to, because we were kind of like it's the canary in the coal mine. Is that the phrase? Like we were, I guess, sort of the first ones in a way to sort of go down the YouTube route that had that sort when advertising came in and the businesses surrounded it as well, and like things like books and stuff happened. Whereas if you were in any other sort of industry like acting, you could look up and go, oh, I want to be like Robert De Niro or Tom Hanks or any of the big actors. Whereas with YouTube, when we started, you couldn't. There's
no track
your guess
record
as good as mine. Yeah. Whereas now, young kids that want to become creators, or anyone that wants to get into content creation, they can see where you can get to now. There is sort of levels of where there is, what's the word? There is, you can now see how high that platform can go. So you've got to do it authentically. I think cause you can see like YouTubers that are doing crazy stuff or doing all these amazing things or living this really, really nice lifestyle. You might go, I really want that, but you've got to genuinely enjoy what you're making. You've got to have a passion for what you're making, and you've got to be authentic, because that's what keeps your audience there. Is if your audience see that you're enjoying it and you would do it whether they watch you regardless, that's what actually makes them stick around and go, you're a genuine nice person.
Now it's time for Story of the Week, where my guests get to talk about their favourite news story of the past 7 days. Joe, what's your Story of the Week?
My Story of the Week. We've just had the Olympics. So I think kind of like the stories that have come out of the Olympics in general, I think especially looking at it from, like we were discussing earlier about traditional and the internet and those kind of worlds combining. Obviously the Olympics, such a massive landmark for television and something that's huge on TV. There's been so many moments that have gone viral, and I can't remember the last Olympics if we had that many sort of like social media-y moments, whereas like this Olympics I really have felt like, maybe because the last Olympics was during COVID, I don't know, but this one has had so many like meme moments and stuff. So we had, obviously the big one was Ray Gunn, the break dancer from Australia, who my girlfriend has already done a parody of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think because she's Australian, she loved it. She's our new hero. But also the Turkish shooter as well, who had like one hand in his pocket, didn't have any of the equipment, just turned up.
Pair of jeans
on. It just looked like a middle-aged dad, just got lost, turned up, was like, I'll have a go at this, bang. And then it ended up becoming like the thing. So I watched the pole vaulter as well. I forgot his name. Yes, Duplantis. Duplantis, when he got another world record, and afterwards he just did the celebrate. Like they all started doing the celebration of this like Turkish shooter. Yeah. But it's like there's so many. Yeah, there's loads of like moments, and then you go on social media and like you start looking at one like meme of it and something, then you just get bombarded with them all, and it's so funny to see like the memes. There was one meme of Ray Gun where it's like when you lift up a rock and you see all the bugs underneath the rock, and it's her on the floor, it's like wriggling around, like things like that. That's what I love to scroll through when I do get a little bit of screen time. Yeah, things like that.
Well, Joe, I've got a story of the week to ask you about. Okay. Here's the headline: Joe Sugg plans to quit UK with Strictly's Diane Buswell after uncertainty over marriage.
Well, here's the exclusive, Justin. No. Do you know what? I go to Australia a lot. I've actually been to Australia 7 times now, which I never thought. I went once when I was 18, backpacking, and I thought, this is it, the furthest I'm ever going to be away from home. This is it now. My one time in Australia, and didn't think I'd end up with an Australian girlfriend. So now I go there all the time. So I've been 7 times, which is crazy. I do like it. The Australian lifestyle does suit me because I very much am. I do like a relaxed, slow pace of life, kind of like the Aussie surfer. Yeah. I can imagine myself growing my hair out and becoming an Aussie surfer, but not yet. There's something I think, but I'm also quite like I'm a village kid at heart. Like I need to be in the countryside, and I do love the hustle and bustle of London, and all our work's over here as well. So never say never. I think maybe one day there might be a chance of flying out there and staying out there a lot longer. But at the moment, and people do say to me, why don't you just go out there for like the winter months and come and do the UK in the summer months, which would be great. But I think for my work, and especially for Diane's work with Strictly, like we can't. That's a long commute for her to get to Elstree each weekend.
Yeah, that's true. And in Australia, there's so many things that can sting you.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Now it's time for Hero of the Week, Joe. Who's your hero of the week?
My hero of the week. I was going to say the Turkish shooter, but I'm not going to say him. He's already had too much promo on this podcast. It sounds corny, but I am going to say my girlfriend Diane Buswell. I think because she I've got a lot of weird, wacky ideas, and we're both very, very different, but we're also both have the same mentality of support each other in the work that we do. So she's away a lot with Strictly tours and stuff. So sometimes we are passing ships, which, I mean, even today, as I was getting the train in, I passed on the train going back the other way. So, but she's always been super supportive in some of the ideas I've had, and some of them have been like ideas that are really like out there, kind of like far-fetched, but she's always kind of like trying to add to it, or like try and help me with ideas, and just being like very, very supportive, and never going like, no, I can't see that working, or she's always sort of got my back with what I do and the endeavors that I do and get up to. So I think, as corny as it sounds, she's and as soppy as it sounds, she's my hero of the week every week.
All right, fantastic. And any plans for any shows together? Because that would be.
Oh, we did have a show that we were a week away from it going out, and we were going to do arenas around the UK. It was the Joe and Diane show in 2020, start of 2020, but then COVID hit. And then I mentioned recently actually on a Q&A, I said, I think, because people always ask, are we going to do it again? Because we had like 13 dances in this, and we had the whole show was based around what would happen if we didn't meet on the show. So would we still come together? And if so, what scenario would it have been? So like in different lifetimes and stuff. So it's different scenarios. Like one was like we meet on a thatched roof one day, or one we meet in a zombie apocalypse, and all these little weird things. We always end up breaking out into a dance or something. And it was such a great show, but I think it was just sort of, that was right off the back of Strictly and me doing Waitress and all this kind of stuff. So it was very
of the moment.
I think like now, if we tried to bring it back, I just don't think it would sort of hit the same. I don't think. I think we sort of missed the boat on that one, but never say never. I still love dancing. It's such a good form of exercise. So I would love to do like a little show, maybe. Who knows?
Finally, Joe, who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
Who or what can get in the bin? People that are too quick to go to a negative of something.
Too quick to judge.
Too quick to judge, and too quick to dismiss and go, no, like those people that are too quick to like shut down. I think they can,
they can get in the bin.
They can get in the bin. You just need to chill out. You need to like embrace everything and just, life's too short.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on TellyCast. It's been brilliant to chat with you.
Yes, likewise.
Best of luck with Final Straw Productions.
Thanks so much.
Obviously, you've got lots of ideas for the future, and it's really exciting.
Real.
And Date Me at My Worst. Looking forward to seeing how that does as well.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
Well, that's about it for another week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. TellyCast was produced by Spirit Studios and recorded in London. For more videos featuring the movers and shakers of the TV and digital content industries, just hit the subscribe button below. We'll be back with another show very soon. Until then, stay safe.